astounding discovery, changing our lives forever. Open a door in your mind and step through into the realm of weird connections. Coming up, we need to face facts. Chimpanzees are actually better with numbers than most of us are. That's the bad news. But the good news is what the chimps know today might possibly help make all of us smarter tomorrow. All in 5 weird connections. Behold, weird connection number 1. Chimpanzees who are smarter than a university professor. The Primate Research Institute at Kyoto University. Dr. Matsuzawa has discovered something known to all parents. Youngsters love playing on computers, although chimps can likely beat your kids at their own game.
I know chimpanzees are so like us, very close to humans. And even more, in some cases, chimpanzee intelligence may be better than humans.
Chimps brighter than people? How could that be possible? Memory is the core of all learning. They say an elephant never forgets. But Dr. Matsuzawa says that theory should be applied to chimpanzees. They have much better memory than we do. And to prove it, he taught them a series of number games on the computer.
The aim of this experiment is to compare the memory capability between humans and chimpanzees. And for that purpose, I taught the numerals in advance.
With the aid of an apple snack dispenser, 4-year-old Ayumu, the chimp, quickly learned to touch the numbers in order from 1 to 9. Now here's the wow part. Dr. Matsuzawa then brought the numbers up in random sequence, and with lightning speed, the chimps could point to them in correct order. Try that with a human 4-year-old. As far as we know, no humans of any age could excel at the next test. But watch the chimps in action.
Using the same apparatus and same procedure, I wanted to compare the memory capability of humans and chimpanzees.
Ayumu was given a blink of an eye, a fifth of a second, to see a random sequence of 5 numbers. Incredibly, the chimp was expected to remember which 5 numbers they were and point to them in sequence from smallest to largest. In a fifth of a second, Ayumu's brain was able to capture the number sequences in memory and hit the numbers in order 80% of the time. The human brain seemed to plod along during this same memory test, getting at least half wrong every time. Whether we like it or not, in some ways, chimps really are the brighter species.
Now I'm very much convincing that chimpanzees could be better than humans in a certain memory task, and it was amazing.
You see, chimps have something you may have heard of called photographic memory. A quick snap brain, like a camera. We once had it too before we acquired speech.
We humans lost this memory capability. Instead of it, we acquired a new ability to represent things, symbolic communication, such as language.
The development of language may have actually pushed aside photographic memory back during the dawn of man. Can we get it back? Can we all become geniuses? A California bank robber is brandishing a gun.
Put your hands straight up. That's it. Put the bills up on the counter. Come on, big bills. Move, you two. Come on, stand back.
Don't worry, this man is not a criminal. Language is the real thief.
Don't press the alarm and you won't get hurt.
Psychologist Jonathan Schooler, based at the University of California at Santa Barbara, used a phony robbery in an unusual memory test. Taking the chimp findings one step further, he was determined to prove that human memory is being distorted every day by our use of language.
Language is really a two-edged sword. It gives us amazing capacities. It allows us to communicate in remarkable ways. There are a lot of experiences in life that are very hard to put into words. A taste, a color, a face. Trying to capture that experience in words might actually be disruptive.
Think about it. Have you ever had trouble describing the way someone looks? Is language ruining the superior primate memory that is still inside our brains?
Okay, this is a stick-up. Okay, stand back. Stand back.
Schooler devised an ingenious experiment that could actually rate the effect of verbal description on human memory.
The goal of the experiment is to see what is the effect of trying to capture in words a nonverbal experience, such as one's experience of having previously seen a face.
He recruited test subjects, including Catherine and Philip, and asked them to watch a staged bank robbery. The actor's face was clearly visible at all times.
Don't hit that button. Put the bills up on the counter. They're big bills. Move.
Philip's group had to write a detailed description of the gunman.
Don't press the alarm. You won't get hurt.
Okay, it's important that you describe all of his different features and with such detail that somebody else would be able to recognize him based on your description alone. Please begin.
Catherine's group was deliberately given an unrelated task to keep them away from any verbal description.
Okay, now write down all the different United States of America that you can think of.
Both test groups were then shown 8 mugshots, one of which was the culprit.
Okay, here we have a lineup. What I'd like you to do is to identify the individual you believe was the bank robber in the previous video that you just watched.
Him. Don't press the alarm.
It was him.
You won't get hurt.
The results clearly confirmed the theory. Even though they'd seen the same video, the volunteers picked different suspects from the lineup.
And what we found was that when people had engaged in verbal description, they were substantially less accurate in identifying the previously seen bank robber.
The group that used language to describe the robber before the lineup failed miserably. 60% of them could not make a correct ID. For the group that didn't use language, success. 65% got it right.
It seems that face recognition is a very, very basic, primitive ability, and that language is sort of a more evolved capacity, and that when people engage in verbal description, that may be interfering with the more basic, almost unconscious face recognition processes.
This phenomenon is known as verbal overshadowing. It's when language distorts your memory. See how Weird Connection 2 links up with Weird Connection 1? The chimp and the human both had better memories when language didn't get in the way. Wait till you see number 3. The weirdest connection yet. Human research subjects get zapped and blinded in a quest for monkey memory magic. Weird Connection 3. In Exeter, England, Dr. Jakob Yolai says a powerful magnetic force can temporarily block the back part of the brain where conscious vision is processed, unlocking a more primitive way of visual processing called unconscious vision. Like Professor Matsuzawa, Professor Yolai believes that our brain has evolved so that basic functions like unconscious vision have been replaced by higher functions.
Subconscious vision is playing a smaller and smaller role over evolution. So what your conscious visual system can do is quite amazing. And if you compare it with how crude the subconscious visual system is, well, your conscious visual system is simply a lot more accurate. It's slower, but it's more accurate.
Our unconscious visual system is a relic of our prehistoric past. Without realizing we've seen a thing, we can pick up danger signals, changes in light, motion, even emotional cues from humans and other animals.
Imagine you're walking in a jungle and there's a tiger coming at you. Well, if you have to rely on conscious vision, it takes up to maybe 200 milliseconds before you see the tiger. Well, by that time you're probably already, well, if not eaten, certainly bitten. Subconscious vision is a lot faster. You can be running away within about 50 milliseconds from the tiger.
Would you ever volunteer for this? Test subjects are going to lose their sight for a few split seconds because of a strong magnetic pulse. It's called transcranial magnetic stimulation. The lie claims it is harmless. Without normal sight, experiments can be done on the more primitive form of vision still hidden deep in our brain.
Well, the aim of this experiment was to study how subconscious vision contributes to behavior in normal participants.
Brave Hannah put herself in the hands of science.
I'm now going to position this magnet to the back of your head.
She sat in front of a computer screen with the large sight zapper pointed straight at the back of her head.
Okay?
That was fine.
Brilliant. Now we're ready to start the experiment.
4 faces flashed up on the screen at the same time. 3 were neutral faces, but the 4th was either happy or sad. They would only be on the screen for a split second. Blink and you'll miss it. Hannah was then instructed to identify whether one of the faces was happy or sad and point to the place where it had been. As the stimulator shorted out her sight, Hannah pressed on.
It's just like someone's flicking the back of your head, really.
She said she could barely notice the split-second blindness of the magnetic pulse. But during that time, the faces appeared on the screen. Hannah saw a blank screen, but her primitive unconscious sight was hard at work, registering the faces without her knowledge. When the test was over, Hannah seemed fine, and the results were conclusive. Hannah and the other subjects were able to recall the correct emotion of the little faces, even though they didn't think they could actually see them.
It's very fast, you can't really tell consciously what the emotion was, but you're normally left with some sort of sense of whether it was happy or sad.
When the participants were able to see the stimulus, they were correct about 70-75% of the time. And when we used the magnet, they couldn't see the stimulus anymore, but still they were able to give the correct answer 70-75% of the time. So even though they couldn't see it, they were, well, just as good as when they could see the emotion.
Unconscious vision holds remarkable promise for the untapped resources of the human mind. Scientists had long suspected that humans might have access to an alternative, more basic form of vision.
Shortly after the First World War, there were first reports of soldiers who had damage to the back part of their brains, the occipital lobe, who could not consciously see things, but nevertheless were able to guess where something was or whether a light came up. Well, in the late 1970s, there was a structural investigation into this. It's something that's not really uncommon in patients who have brain damage in the back part of their heads, in the occipital lobe. You find that these patients report that they can't see a thing, but nevertheless, if you show them, for example, a light turning on, they are able to say that something happened.
It's only using today's cutting-edge technology, transcranial magnetic stimulation, that science has been able to confirm that there really is more to sight than meets the eye. Here's how it works. If your vision is not impaired, information from the optic nerve transmits to the back of your brain for high-level processing we call sight. When the powerful magnet shorts out the back brain functions, the parallel primitive vision pathways take over. They bypass the zap part and take messages straight to the part of the brain that decodes danger and emotion. So, like the chimps, we still have our primitive vision and memory skills deep inside. We just need high-tech methods to get at them. Get ready for Weird Connection number 4. You too could be a creative genius of the future. At the University of Sydney, Australia, Professor Alan Snyder will blow your mind by zapping someone's brain in an entirely different way. He thinks we could become great artists, writers, musicians, and painters if we could turn off all those oppressive higher brain functions like logic and language.
I'm fascinated by how you can turn on hidden skills, not by exciting some part of the mind, but by turning off part of the mind.
What excites Professor Snyder is the idea that a human being has the potential to completely change the way they look at the world.
Normal people, I say, make hypotheses about the world based on the mindsets they have, based on their past experience. So they look at the world in, I guess, what you'd say is a prejudiced manner. They have expectations of what to see. Now that is a problem when it comes to being original, isn't it? Because how can you join the dots up in a unique way if you are compelled to join them the way you've seen them joined previously? So it's a real advantage if you could momentarily look at the world the way it actually is. You could see the dots, free of previous interpretation.
The professor thought he could do this by taking the work of Professor Yolai just that little bit further. This researcher is ready to shoot powerful magnetic pulses at his student's left brain hemisphere for a full 15 minutes. Dr. Snyder chose to zap the left side of the brain because logic, language, and knowledge acquisition happen here. The right hemisphere holds the mysterious something we call creativity. Snyder knew that some people with autism have incredible abilities because the left side of their brain is impaired. Snyder compared drawings of horses done by 4-year-old kids with one drawn by an autistic kid of the same age.
Autistic people are copying something that exists in all of our minds. We all have it. So if we can invent ways to tap our inner mind, we can all do these things. These skills are innate to every human being.
If certain parts of the left side of the brain were switched off, would the hidden talents of the right side spring to life?
In our experiment, we inhibit the left, more conceptual brain and disinhibit, engage, as it were, the right, more literal brain.
First, Snyder tested volunteer Steve's visual sense and drawing ability.
What I'm going to do is show you a number of dots on the screen, and I want you to call out the number you see.
He was average at guessing the amount of dots on a split-second screen.
How many?
30, 70, 110.
And maybe a bit below average in drawing from memory.
Just draw a horse from memory. I'm going to give you 2 minutes. Okay, thank you.
Not the best horse drawing we've seen. Then, the powerful magnetic pulsator hit his left brain.
I'm going to get this coil against your anterior temporal lobe, and for 15 minutes, we're going to give you magnetic pulses.
With his left switched off, the right brain flourished.
40, 100, 45.
The theory worked.
Before TMS, Steve never got the right number. He didn't have one bullseye, we call it. And after TMS, he had 2 that he got exactly right.
In a moment's glance, he could figure out how many dots appeared on the screen. His artwork on a new horse drawing dramatically improved. How could this drastic improvement happen so quickly? And can we all access hidden talents without brain zapping? Well, with parts of the left side of the brain knocked out, Steve saw shapes as they actually were, free of interpretation. So rather than trying to mentally connect the dots or remembering the concept of a horse, Steve had privileged access to a more unconscious and uncluttered way of seeing things.
Well, most people draw what they know, not what they see. You kind of draw the caricature of an animal or a horse in this case. But with TMS, the idea is that people become more literal. and they can draw what they see.
While Professor Snyder pressed on with his work to enhance healthy brains, word of this incredible discovery made its way to Harvard University and other labs around the country investigating cures for mental illnesses, autism, and Alzheimer's disease. From brainy chimps to curing brain-related problems in people, it's been a weird, wild, and wonderful journey through 4 connections. Next, how to access your own genius of the future. Just imagine a world where you could solve problems with a device that could switch off parts of the left side of your brain to allow you to think outside the box.
If we could make our brains literal and see the world the way it is, we're much more apt to be able to make creative leaps. One of the driving forces behind all our work is to ultimately make a thinking cap, a device that makes us more creative.
The creative genius
I made the thinking cap. It's called the Skio.
Unleashed at the flick of a switch. Architects could create unheard of designs. Businesses could develop future.
There is a device that does this.
Finally unravel the
A device with 40 years of history, experience, literature. 20 years in the marketplace, fully registered, fully compliant, absolutely tested, 30,000 sold worldwide. Devices that help make you more intelligent, making people smarter. The Skio.
Weird Connections
It works.
might help pave the way to a future world of healthier and brainier people.
And the Skio has already done that. Daniel Tamand is well known for his unusually vivid and complex synesthesia. In his mind, he says, each positive integer up to 10,000 has its own unique shape, color, texture, feel. He intuitively sees results of calculations as synesthesia landscapes without conscious mental effects. He can see the numbers in the prime complexes. He describes his visual images of 289 as ugly, 333 as attractive, pi as beautiful, and basically all these numbers have something to do. He says the 925 is energetic, the kind of number you would invite to a party. Traumet not only verbally describes these visions, he's also created artwork. Here's a picture of the watercoloring of the painting of pi. We're going to now experience part of his world.
With a calculator.
And now you will see.
You can't see this calculator.
There is a different way of analyzing numbers.
First, ask Daniel to multiply 37 by itself.
This incredible experience will change the way you think about the mind.
37 to the power of 4.
He's seeing things in his head, seeing visions. He is not calculating, not using words.
Yeah.
He's seeing pictures in a process known as synesthesia.
74,161. Amazing. Just to make sure that people say, well, perhaps you just know a few of these off by heart. Okay. Let me just choose another one.
Next, we asked him to divide 13 by 97.
Synesthesia, very incredible.
1340206. That's as far as my calculator goes. Okay. Brilliant. 185. 567. You're carrying on.
I'm carrying on. Do you want me to stop or?
How many points can you do it to?
100. Nearly 100.
At this point, we borrowed a computer that gave us the answer to 32 decimal places.
Incredibly, he's been tested all over the world. This is absolutely undeniable, true fact.
618.
The world as we know it has changed.
567.
As he went on, every single number was correct. And he even surpassed the computer.
4, 6, 3.
This This has all been confirmed 1,000 times. These abilities do exist, but they are beneath the verbal mind, the verbal brain.
Pointing to the table and doing shapes with your fingers. What's going on there?
I'm seeing the numbers, but I'm not seeing them. It's strange.
I'm seeing pictures, shapes and patterns. Almost like a square, like the texture of water, drops, ripples almost. Like something reflective. It's something you can look through, almost metallic, like bubbles, like a half cloud, a bit like a flash. It sounds preposterous, but if it's true, it blows away scientific theory. Daniel's brain seems to be doing something almost magical. It appears to be doing maths without him actually having to think. As if this wasn't enough.
Think verbally, that is. See, he thinks differently. Now we will see more of the powers of the mind when we turn off the verbal parts, going into the Buddhist philosophy.
That people draw great pride and inspiration from here.
Rambon Jan, a 15-year-old boy, has been meditating in dense jungle without food or water for 10 months. Many suggest he is a physiological and cognitive freak, with such immense power of mind over matter that it could change the way we look at modern science and medicine forever.
If he's truly gone without food and water, it's difficult to explain on a purely scientific basis, so you'd have to bring in spirituality in here.
The longest a person can go without food has been documented as being around 2.5 months before you die of starvation. In an open environment, breathing normally with warm air surrounding you without any fluid at all, you would last between 4, perhaps 5 days.
Rambon Jan has not eaten and, more importantly, not drunk anything for 10 months. By filming him continuously over the next 4 days, we will investigate this phenomenon and discover whether a human being can live without food and water.
It would be impossible to meditate for that long without food and water.
I studied similar cases in the past, and this is possible.
Through his deep meditation, he's gone into a hibernating state, and he is living on spiritual energy.
I can't accept that. It goes against what I know about how the body works, about the nutrition that you need. He's getting food and he's getting fluid from somewhere.
We have a self-righteous fat lady here. Breatharians do exist. The Roman Catholic Church lists over 250 people who have lived without food or water for 2 years. The Buddhists list thousands, the Hindus even more. This is done by spiritual masters who can turn off their verbal mind. The AMA lists none because they cannot turn off their verbal mind. To accuse all the religions as liars is a display of ignorance.
As science progresses, it's pushing God further and further out. And where science hasn't yet encroached, you will find God.
Like 70% of the body is water. Without it, it would affect every physical functioning of the body.
By day 2, you start to cannibalize the stores of protein that you have.
I would say from day 2, your skin is going to get rough, cracks appearing at the corner of the lips, and the skin will lose its color and the brightness and the elasticity.
So far, we have not seen any of these physical changes in the boy's appearance.
He is surviving on nourishment. The question is, what kind of nourishment? We can't, as Westerners, tap into using spiritual force and spiritual energy for nourishment. That's the key here.
To endure solitary existence in extreme conditions, yogic techniques enable you to focus your mind over your body's suffering.
Obviously, if he's genuine, has to use some yogic techniques like feeding on the air, feeding on the breath. There are other techniques where you use a stone, a little stone that you put in your mouth, and you feed on the stone. There are all those stories. They are documented in the literature, in Buddhist literature.
To understand what type of yogic technique Ram is practicing from the Sakya tradition of teaching, the Lama sits and stares at the boy.
I'm amazed by this immense, the intensity of his determination. He told his mother that he was going to sit there for 6 years and reach Buddhahood, you know, which is very rare. I mean, nobody says that, you know.
They sit facing each other for more than an hour in what seems to turn into a meditation duel. Sweat starts to form on Ram's face despite a lack of movement and an air temperature of only 15 degrees centigrade.
To suddenly start pouring sweat from the face is a very strange phenomenon. He's managing to control his body's physiological process, which no one has demonstrated before. It's not something you ever see in Western society. So how that's being controlled is beyond my level of knowledge.
When he was sitting down, I was doing my meditation. Actually, I was competing. And you know that the sweat came down.
Okay, so why did you sweat?
No, it's a secret thing I don't want to tell you right now.
In ancient Buddhist texts, it is written there is a yogic technique called tumo, which increases the body's temperature under intensive meditation. Sweating is a side effect.
Tumo is a particular form of Tibetan meditation where the exponents are capable of withstanding extremely harsh conditions with very little food, very little water, and very little clothing.
Some lamas are doing meditation in the icy Himalaya. From their body they bring the heat. So, same way, maybe he has done that.
American scientists tested the theory in 1982. Monks were soaked in sheets of cold water. 45 minutes later, steam began rising through the cloth.
Some of the studies that I've been doing have shown that even novices using Tibetan chanting can increase their tolerance to cold pressor pain by 100% or more.
But imagine he can do this for...
Ram Bonjan has been sitting under a tree in the jungle of southern Nepal. His supporters claim without food or water for 10 months. 48 hours ago, we started filming continuously, day and night. Just what should his body be going through?
By day 3, you stop producing urine. The person's blood pressure will fall because there's not enough fluid in the system to maintain the circulation.
His cheeks would really start to get hollow. Your skin is going to get rough and it would crack more easily, it would bleed more easily, especially if someone is sitting in the environment and not really protected from the elements, the rain and the sun and the cold weather.
Ram still looks exactly the same. We've not witnessed him move, eat or drink anything since our arrival. But strangely, we've seen him sweating profusely, an indication he's practicing tumo, an ancient form of meditation. Could this yogic technique explain how he is managing to survive and stay so healthy?
Through the power of his mind, he's been successful in physically lowering his whole metabolic state, so therefore his requirements are also going to drop to 200 to 300 calories in energy terms a day.
He'd have to be taking some nutrition from somewhere. Perhaps it was a tree sap. He would be getting sugars from that, and that would modify fast. That would protect some of his protein stores.
I think he's practicing types of ancient yogic exercises where you can feed on one breath or feed on the elements in the air.
The people in this area, they don't tell lies. They tell the truth that you have. That is also the proof.
After 96 hours of filming, Ram has defied modern science by continuing his meditation and remaining alive. Many of the pilgrims at the site are from a scientific background and are torn by what they see. Is he a miracle or a myth?
त्यति गरेपछि यो विज्ञान रिराइट हुन्छ यो विज्ञान फेलर हो हेर्नुस् यो मोडर्न मेडिसिनको म डाक्टरको कामै छैन यहाँ
विज्ञान फेलर भन्न मिल्दैन कि यसमा के छ विज्ञानले अहिलेसम्मको जति आविष्कारहरू गरेको छ नि
We have whole religions built around miracles. Jesus rose from the grave. Millions of people believe that. That's the center and core of their religion. How do we say in another culture it's not possible? Everything is possible.
होइन सुन्नु त्यो मेडिटेसन गरेर होइन त्यो मेडिकल साइन्सको कुरा गर्नुहुन्छ नि मेडिकल साइन्स पनि अझै पनि पूर्ण छैन.
Prolonged fasting is not as simple as we understand. We all should explore the benefits of this kind of fasting. I was really fascinated to see the boy who is fasting for 6 to 8 months, and that is not at all really so exciting to me because I studied similar cases in past and I can understand this is possible.
Dr. Shah's most famous case is Prahlad Jani, A holy man who claims he has not eaten or drunk anything since he was 12.
I haven't eaten anything, not even now, even though I'm 80 years old.
That made me really quite excited because I knew that this is something going to change the feeling of medical world.
Although I walk 100-200 kilometers in the jungle, I never sweat, nor feel tired or sleepy. I can meditate for 3, 8 or 12 hours or even months.
Prahlad Jani recently spent 10 days in observation, watched and filmed 24 hours a day.
Minute to minute, second to second. And he was kept in a cabin which was sealed from outside. The bathroom was sealed. One of my assistants would remain with him all throughout 24 hours in changing duty. Doctors would come throughout the day at different time which was not be told to him. And we made sure that nothing can go wrong, in the sense medical world should know that there was not a single loophole.
They took blood samples from me 3 times a day, morning, afternoon and evening. They checked my kidney, brain and put machines all over my body. They were trying to find out which factors made my body work. They put machines inside my body also.
He was not given any food or water, and even when he was allowed to take a bath, the quantity of water was measured before and after to make sure nothing was lost.
As I said, after 10 days, the parameters were all normal. We studied his hematology, and whatever studies you can think of, we could do it.
I will live up to approximately 1,000 to 5,000, maybe even 10,000 years with this kind of body.
That there was no food or water given to this man, that he did not pass urine or stool, and even he did not dribble urine. After a few hours the urine would appear, some fluid would appear in the bladder and again it would disappear.
It is possible to modify fluid intake so you produce a very small amount of urine each day. And if he is covered with a cloth, the chances are he could urinate and it would evaporate from the ground or soak into the ground without anyone noticing.
Modern medicine tells us that an average human can only survive for 4 days without water. While confined, Prahlad Jani incredibly lasted 10 days under observation. Dr. Shah has a theory on how he's managing to survive without food or fluid. He feels the holy man is feeding off the sun.
Hiranandhan Manik used to do solar gazing. He says that you have to go to a flat ground and barefooted and just look at the sun.
It's impossible for us to generate heat or light energy from looking at the sun, almost likening it to photosynthesis, which is the process by which plants generate their energy supply. And this is absolutely impossible for a human being to do.
On the first day you look for 5 seconds, but without blinking your eyes. Every few days you increase few seconds, and maybe after a month you come to a minute or so.
In fact, staring at the sun would damage the retina of the eye.
Scientists from America also examined him several times in ophthalmic system, and he found nothing abnormal.
The sun transmits energy through a hole in the holy man's throat, producing a sticky, solid lump that he can redigest. This, he claims, refuels the chakra power points in his body.
It is not a miracle, it is supernatural.
Could these results provide the answer to how the boy is surviving without food and water? When we get back to the site, we are met with a very different scenario. While we were away, 59 people witnessed Ram spontaneously burst into flames as fire erupted from his chest.
On the 5th of January, Wednesday, around 8 o'clock, we saw fire coming from him. He stood and threw the cloth in front of him and was naked in the middle of a burning fire. And then after some time, in a very soft voice, he called for his brother. He asked for a red rope to be thrown over him. He wrapped the cloth over his body and he said, let him concentrate on his meditation and do not disturb him.
We reset our cameras to record the next 4 days and nights. the length of time it takes for a human to die without fluid. This is the only way we can prove if he is genuine or not. After 48 hours of continuous observation, Ram still hasn't moved.
What is almost unbelievable is the fact that this child manages to stay in the same position during waking hours and sleeping hours.
Try sitting for 30 minutes or an hour, 3 hours, not moving, just concentrating.
And within 24 to 36 hours, where the skin surface reaches the contact point of where you're sitting, you will get damage to that skin area. And the formation of what we know in the Western world is called a pressure sore.
It is the most challenging thing he's doing it. Incredible.
A few hours later, he begins fidgeting and jerking.
What you probably notice if you scrutinise your footage very carefully is that there are very small changes. What he's actually doing is shifting balance maybe from one buttock to another to relieve pressure points and allow blood flow back to that tissue.
Ram appears to show no classic signs of degeneration through fluid loss, but a closer look at our footage might help us understand his physical and mental health.
He looks unwell. If you saw this individual sat against a wall in London, you'd be very concerned about how he looks.
As life passes him by, Ram just sits calmly meditating.
There is a swelling in his neck, but whether that represents a goiter or an underactive thyroid is very difficult to say. Having a severely underactive thyroid would mean that your metabolic rate is incredibly low, which means that you can survive for a very long time without food and fluid. It almost looks like you can see the ribs showing through, and that would represent quite advanced starvation, and you started to waste away the muscles between the lungs, between the rib cages. Probably sat in that position well away from individuals is the safest thing for him in order to prevent an infection that could ultimately kill him.
Is Ram now a victim of his own success, being slowly starved to death for profit? Only time will tell.
This could turn out to be a very sad story.
With a prolonged deficiency of food and water, your brain is going to lack the glucose, you're not going to have enough fluid in your system.
As you progress without those fluids, you become delirious. On day 4, that confusion will get worse. You may start fitting, your body is going into kidney failure, and ultimately the person dies of dehydration.
To rule out foul play within the secure inner enclosure, we defy the committee and enlist Prem Lema, Ram's oldest friend and carer, to get a closer look.
In the beginning, he used to walk around this tree in the morning chanting mantras. After that, he meditated for 3 months before going into the deep trance that he's in today.
After a thorough search inside the tree and the ground area surrounding Ram, there's nothing suspicious. No food pipes buried or supplies hidden.
It's very difficult when you have that belief that you have an individual that has transcended our normal biological needs of food and fluid. It's very hard to...
It's hard for her to give up her beliefs.
It's very hard to reject that if you truly believe. It's very hard to...
Her beliefs are rigidly adhered to and clung to.
Reject that if you truly believe.
No one really knows what Ram is thinking, how he is surviving, or if he is Buddha. And so it turned out. March the 13th, 2006, events took a turn that no one could have anticipated. Ram disappeared. Some reports suggest he's gone deeper into the jungle to continue his meditation in peace, undisturbed.
So now we have shown that underneath the words, there are superpowers of the mind. Fact. Proven. Established.